back to another episode of the Backlog Breakdown, a video game podcast where we seek to encourage and equip the church to engage the medium of video games wisely and responsibly. I am your host, Nate, and with me today is my co-host and brother in Christ, Joshua. Hi, Josh.
Hey, how's it going? I'm gonna
Well,
make sure that I'm extra animated and moving around.
if everything goes according to plan,
Mhm.
this will be our first episode on YouTube. Um,
Look, Ma, I'm on the internet.
we'll be
Not
on the
just my voice.
internet, where we will probably open ourselves up to all sorts of other chicanery.
Because
Um, you know,
before this, no one knew that I was bald. Isn't that
and
crazy?
yeah,
Yeah,
um,
man.
yeah, and I just like
I'm sorry to
people.
disappoint you.
Yeah, people will find all. I'm not sure that I'm prepared for
Mm.
the abuse that will probably be heaped on
We
us.
will probably get death threats if the internet is to be trusted. Anyone who has an opinion on the internet gets death threats. So.
Yeah,
We might get
and
swatted while recording sometime. It's gonna be fun.
uh,
It's gonna be fun.
I don't
I'm
know.
excited.
I don't know.
It's gonna
I
be a good year.
This is making me regret my decisions. um,
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, New Year, new us.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I actually have a body this year.
yeah, we are not just corporeal voices, shrieking into the void.
Incorporeal. Yeah. Now we
Incorporeal.
are corporeal.
Now we
Yeah.
are corporeal.
We have a
You're correct.
corpus.
We have corpuses or corpi.
Corpi.
Would
Ooh.
it be corpi? I don't know.
I don't know. I've never heard that before.
No.
Or a corpuscle.
But I mean, let's be honest. How many people actually use corpus? Um,
That's true.
we're just weirdos. But hey, whatever. So if this is your first time with us, sorry. But
Yeah.
hello and welcome. Uh,
Hey.
yeah. So yeah, and if it did to all of our previous and returning listeners, hey guys, we're even more on the internet than we were before.
Mm.
Yay, us. And maybe you really like this. But Josh, well, it's been an
It's been
exactly an undisclosed
Hmm.
amount of time since I last talked to you. And
That's right.
I think that it would behoove us rather, I guess,
Hmm.
to maybe
Yep.
do a little bit of catch up. So, um, how have you been now? Since I last talked to you, really.
Hmm.
And the thing is, like, we're not gonna have, like, because of all this stuff.
Hmm.
We have not experienced Christmas yet, even though this is coming after our Christmas episode and
What?
after all of that. But
Oh no.
we're kind of, yeah. So I'm not going to ask you how your Christmas was. I'll ask you that
Hmm.
next time, if I remember.
Hmm.
But how have you been since we last talked, my friend?
Yeah. No, been doing good, man. It snowed a little bit today, which is so cool. It's so funny to talk to people, who are still asking us, how are we liking the cold weather? But what's also funny is just the different reactions between my kids, my wife, and I, because I'm more along the lines of my kids where they're just like, oh, it's snowing. That's so cool. We get to go outside. Of course, they go outside for like 5 minutes and they're like, oh, my hands hurt. I'm coming inside. Whereas my wife is just, she posted on Facebook just earlier a screen capture of the weather, and it's 8 degrees. When
And
she
she
had
said
posted
it's
it.
not even winter yet. Come on.
Right? Yeah, yeah.
I
She's
saw
like, this
that
is
and I was like,
stupid.
oh Sam. Oh Sam. You
And
you poor sweet summer child.
yep, and that's why it's because I had reminded her, and it's still autumn when we're recording this, and when she
That
posted
goes
that.
back
So
to what we were
um,
talking about, I think, last
that's
episode, where
right.
I'm
On the
like,
last episode,
just
we had the same
December,
conversation.
boom,
Yeah.
winter.
Anyways, but
I'm just
I'm
saying.
still like, I just think it's really pretty. Is it a little bit of a hassle? Sure.
Mhm.
Whether it's snow blowing or warming up your car or something like that. Like, yeah, okay. It is cold, but you just throw on, 6 layers of clothing and you'll be fine, kind of a thing. It's
Or
yeah.
don't go outside. Don't go
Or
outside
don't go outside. You
if you
stay
don't
inside
have
and play
to.
video games.
Yeah.
Um, but no. So anyways, we're having fun. We're having a good time. Yeah, there's more yeah, because of the time dilation, the lead up to Christmas, things are it's coming up quick. And so got
Yeah.
to have stuff planned out and anyways, it's going to be good. We're going to have a great time. Looking forward to enjoying some time off and spending time with family in Texas. And yeah, no, it's gonna be all good things. Even getting there is good too. So, no, we're doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
we've got some snow. This is like the second time of snow. And you know what? Like
Oh,
it was actually like nice this time. Now, it wasn't a
okay.
ton, but
Yeah,
you remember how
yeah. We
last
only got
time?
an inch.
Yeah, I don't think we even got an inch.
Okay, cool.
It wasn't even enough to like actually blanket anything.
Oh, okay.
It was like you could still see some grass, like, it
Hmm.
was patchy, but this was like much more pristine looking than, that time we got like the 9 inches in like
Right.
in an
Yeah, man.
afternoon. Cause
Whew.
like here's the thing, it's like when snow falls, there's like a little bit of a window where, yeah, it looks nice, it's kind of pretty, it's kind of cool, and then it just gets
Yep.
sloppy. And we went to like straight to like the sloppy, nasty, like salt, slop,
Mm,
slush, garbage, icy trash everywhere.
mm.
Um, and then it rained, and then it all went away, and then
Oh
it warmed
man.
up. Um, so fun story. I was actually in shorts on Tuesday,
Oh wow.
and yeah, I wore shorts,
Wow.
and I pretty much didn't regret it up until like the last hour. And even then, it wasn't like, oh, I'm freezing to death. It was like my shoes were starting to get wet, and I'm mildly uncomfortable. Um, but
Gotcha.
yeah, so things are good. We kind of got something going around the house. Megan and
Oh
Byron,
man.
like Byron has just not been sleeping good for us. So that means
Mm.
he's not sleeping good. We're not sleeping good. And it's busy season, busy, busy, busy. Um, I say this thing, and I was talking to some of the other carriers, and we were just talking about how like peak seems to start earlier, last longer, and it just gets like a little bit worse every year. And
Sure.
so it
Yeah.
just at least that's how it seems. I mean, maybe
Hmm.
there's some data that indicates otherwise, but I wouldn't believe it anyways because I feel old and I'm tired and like
Yeah. Don't let him gaslight you, dude.
no.
No, it's
No.
harder.
Don't
It
come at
always
me
gets
with
harder.
your facts, you
Life
know.
was better back then, dang it.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I enjoyed it more at least. I think it's because I knew less. Um But
I
no,
was a dummy and I loved it.
we're doing well, kind of just gearing up. I actually so I did a thing, and Megan
Mhm.
today, remember how last time we talked, I was like those uh those ghost pepper caramels, and I was like, I don't like them enough to
Mhm.
get a I ordered some more. But
Nice.
I did that as sort of I might like I might put together well, I've got to do the cigar box thing for our patrons,
Mhm.
and but I might do a bit of a like I'm gonna save some for Christmas with family, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
like just put them out and be like, I'm just gonna let people know too, and be like, this is a ghost pepper caramel. Like,
Mhm.
if you're feeling bold, if you're feeling like sort of adventurous, like they won't kill you. They are
Mhm.
surprising. Like,
Mm.
and I
Mm.
actually I do kind of like them. Like,
Nice.
so, but
Well, that's fun.
so yeah, I was just like Megan was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Oh, it's more caramels." She was like, "You bought more?" And I was like, "Yes,
I did.
I did. I did." But well, we are a video game podcast, and we should probably start talking about video game related stuff. But I
Mm.
think before we get into that, uh,
Oh, well, yeah, before we get into that, we have some media to report
Grab
on.
your headphones and turn up the sound. We're here to tell you what's going down. Two podcast hosts with attitude and style, reporting on the media that'll make you smile. We watched a movie, we binged the show.
I hate
Yeah.
this. I
Uh,
hate
I
like
I know
it
you do.
pains me. like I did not think it physically, like there's something, my
Mhm,
body does something where it's like it's being
mhm.
stung by bees, but my heart is
Mm,
being stung by AI bees. Um,
AI bees. Oh, interesting.
but
That hurts. But I mean, it's just like I said on the last episode that we released. I'm just here to make you uncomfortable. It makes for a better podcast. You know,
I
so
don't.
long as one of us is uncomfortable.
That,
If it's not
I,
the ghost peppers,
I just
peppers,
feel
then
like
it's
it's
AI
been
music.
me. There's like there's been sort of a disproportionate. Like I'm the one who's like, you know, but
That's
whatever,
fair.
whatever.
That's
It's
how it goes.
that's just where we're at this point in time. But yeah, dude. So what have you? But non-video game related. What are a few things that you've been into lately?
Yeah. Well, my favorite movies to watch are books. No, sorry, that was a botched Parks and Rec reference. Really, all I have to talk about today are some books. Two in particular for very different reasons. The first one is a short little book. It's from Free Grace Press that I had picked up maybe a month or two ago, that I finished up this week. And I really enjoyed it. It's called What Every Christian Needs to Know About Social Justice by Jeffrey Johnson. Now, the title seems pretty straightforward, but it's kind of funny. It's a short little book, and probably the last quarter of it actually addresses modern day social justice. The rest of it is kind of like, it starts off with almost like a Christian political theory, if that makes sense, like the
Okay.
different spheres, and he explains from Scripture how you understand that God has created the individual, the family unit, the government, and the church as well. So that was really, I thought that was really helpful, the way that he lays that out. Then he talks about Marxism. He talks about how Marxism is atheistic, and anti-God. And so then basically his definition of social justice, I don't think everyone would agree with it. Frankly, it is the idea of equity. So basically people who have more ought to, like, basically be brought down a peg, and the people who have less ought to, like, that stuff ought to be given to the people who have less, so that everyone can be equal in outcome. That might not be how everyone defines social justice. So, like, if that, like, frustrates you, then
Oh, he's
you might
saying that
not like the way that.
functionally, that's kind of how it works. Like a
Yes,
lot of
yeah,
okay,
that's the
okay, okay.
heart of what social justice is. Not justice. Like, justice is a good thing, and it is scriptural. Our God is just. He calls for
Hmm.
justice. But justice is impartial to whether you are in whatever group you're in. You know, have you broken the law? Then there's going to be penalties regardless of
Unless your
what you
daddy's
have
the
or who you are.
president.
Well, see, and
That's
that
that's gonna get us.
Heyo.
Wow.
Welcome to YouTube.
Wah,
That
wah, wah.
we're gonna be like fact checked in the anyways. Um, so all I'll say is I liked the book. It's a short little thing, and I thought it was nice and concise to read through. But I thought he explained himself pretty well, even if he didn't go super deep into it. I thought even just the opening kind of explanation in the first couple
Mhm.
chapters of political theory was really good from Scripture, which I really appreciated. So that one was good. The other book that I have been reading with my kids, I was thinking I should get my kids into some of the classics. Like, honestly, this came from a thought of, like, what should I be training my kids up in? Like, what kind of kids do I want to have is kind of the bigger, broader question that comes with, New Year's goals and schooling and all that stuff. Okay. But I was like, you know what I loved as a kid? I loved getting into Greek myths,
Yeah.
and the Greek pantheon. And so one of those kind of initial, like, primers of stories, like a good collection of Greek myths, that's at like a child level that you could read to a child. My oldest is 9, so him and his sister, who's 7, are they've really been into it. We've been reading this book. It's Delaris. I don't know how to pronounce that. Delaris Book of Greek Myths. I had this book as a kid and read from it and really enjoyed it, and so I wanted to kind of teach it to my kids too. And we had to sit down. The first time that we read it, I was like, the way that this book uses gods, it's not a god. it's
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 not the
sort of like a
same.
glorified human. So
Yeah.
right, so we had that whole conversation, and like, nothing in this book is true, but it teaches us stories of virtue, and it can show us, things that are right and true and good. It also can show us the things that are wrong and bad. But it has, these stories are built on heroes who, go on quests and fight evil, for their own glory in one sense, but also for the betterment of the society that they're a part of. So anyways, we had that conversation, then we started reading them, and my kids have really been getting into them. So we've had lots of fun with that one. So Delari's Book of Greek Myths, if you've never read it, it's a good little. I say little. I mean, it's kind of thick for a kid's book. Like, I'm not going to finish it in the 2 or 3 weeks that I have it from the library or whatever, unless I rent it again. But the story, each chapter is pretty short. It's like a couple pages on each of the Greek gods, and then it goes into some demigods and some other stories and things like that. So
Hmm.
we're enjoying it quite a bit. So I'd recommend both of those books.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's what that's a media I've got to report on. What
That's
do you
it.
have for? Yeah,
Um,
that's it. That's it.
I've got yeah, I can probably cobble together 3. Um,
Oh.
yeah, yeah. Well, and the one's like sort of like a bit of a Hail Mary because we just started watching it tonight, but and we watched it before, but I'll get there when I get there. I'm just gonna double
Mm.
back, and I had last episode talked
Mhm.
about Habits of the Household from
Yes.
Best Radio here by Justin Whitmell.
Early, right?
Early,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Early. There you go.
I've gotten a little farther in the book, and it is becoming a much stronger recommendation. And I
Oh,
think I
okay.
told you,
Nice.
I might have mentioned it when we recorded the Christmas stuff, but his uh he's got a couple chapters on work and play that I think are really fantastic. Um,
Okay. Sweet.
so I just and again, it's not like I don't co-sign to every single thing in the book, but
Sure.
overall I find it to be really helpful, really challenging, and like it does that like convicting and encouraging thing that I think the
Mhm.
best kind of like pop theology books do, where it challenges you and it sort of says like, hey, yeah, you're probably dropping the ball here, but um and I think it just offers some really interesting, like just interesting and useful tools that like to sort of like things that like and I think I talked about it when we talked about Advent, but like we're lighting the candle, and every time we light the candle
Right.
before we eat, we say Christ is the light of the world. um
Mhm.
and it just kind of like it's just, and again, it's a play on the sort of like the you are what you love and digital liturgies, is that like these little things actually, these little small habits actually become much more formative, like, and they have much
Mhm.
larger impact moving forward. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Nice.
so I really like, I'm kind of like doubling down on saying like I think this book is worth reading, worth checking out. And something else,
Sweet.
and I'm not done with the episode. I'm mostly done with the episode, but not quite. uh but I'm trying to pull it up here. Oh, there we go. This is, probably should have just written this down in the show notes, and then I wouldn't look like a total dummy, but whatever. That's but there's Truth Over Tribe, a friend of the show, Patrick Miller, his podcast.
Mhm.
He had, her name is Brenna Blaine, and the it's
Okay.
the episode from December 11th, and it's You Can't Say That in Church with Brenna Blaine. And apparently she wrote a book, I think that's called Can I Say That, or something like that.
Mhm.
And but Patrick had her on, and it's just a really man, I want to read the book now, but like even that
Okay.
episode with her on is just like one of those things. It's very, very, again, convicting but encouraging, and it was just really kind
Mhm.
of a beautiful story about grace and vulnerability, and I think this, kind of just her story in a lot of ways levels a challenge at the church that it's really potent. And again, just based off of that episode, I think that episode is worth checking out and listening to, and just even like the insights from that episode are just phenomenal. Just
Hmm.
like the TLDR. One of the things is that I'm thinking about and wrestling with is a lot of times like just, and again, like sort of like broader evangelicalism, like how much there are people that we kind of like treat as dirty, but like we need them to be in the church. Like we should want
Hmm.
them to be in the church,
Yeah.
and we should really try to be. And again, it's not that we want to like glad hand or like soft sell, or we want to treat their sins seriously, just like we want to treat our own sin seriously.
Right.
But at the same time, say like, no, you are safe here.
Hmm.
Like the God of the universe loves you, and you need him. like And
Yeah.
just, I think there's also sort of an exploration of just the messiness of the human condition in the fallen world, and that I think is potent and valid and good, and that we need to be reminded of. Like, it's, I think in Christendom, it's very easy to get sort of like, I think everybody gets echo chambery these days. Like we all kind of like have our little bubbles,
Sure.
and I think it's like, but I think in Christendom, like we forget that we're to be in the world and not of the world, and that
Mm.
means like, and that we are already but not yet, and so that
Hmm.
we're in the midst of struggles, we're in the midst of transformation, we're and that a lot of times like this on this side of glory, like the walk of sanctification is more often like like a stumbling kind of crawling mess than it is a triumphal march. um
Mm.
you know John Calvin's little golden book,
Hmm.
it, his commentary on sanctification in that is, yeah. But yeah, I really liked her story. I really enjoyed the interview, and I'm looking forward to like, it's funny because Patrick has like some of the stuff, like some of the people that they've had on have been books that I've listened to this year that I've really enjoyed.
Oh yeah.
So
Awesome.
and and again, not a full cosign or to
Sure.
all of this stuff,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
um I did think it, what I've heard so far is really kind of promising, and I'm looking forward to checking it out.
That's
Last
cool.
but not least, I'm just going to recommend the Super Mario
Hmm.
movie again.
Ah,
We turned it
yeah.
on for Byron. Now, he has the attention span of a 2-year-old because he's
Hmm.
2 years old. But
Ah, that makes sense.
he was kind of enraptured by it for a good 15-20 minutes, which is like
It
15
is
20 minutes
colorful.
longer. It's
Yeah.
colorful, and it's like it's fun for mom and dad to watch too.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just
Yeah.
that movie is such a delight. It's just it's fun. And at one
I
point in
agree.
time, Megan was talking to me, and she's like, "Are you listening to me?" And I went, "Oh yeah," like did the like I was kind of like staring slackjaw at the screen, just to be like kind of like smiling and kind of like, yeah. And she's like, "I'm talking." And I said, "Oh, sorry." um,
Nice. Yeah, it's a good one. It's fun. It's fun. I do
yeah,
enjoy that movie
it's
quite a bit.
yeah, it punches way harder than like it is way better than it has any right to be. Like
Hmm.
it's really kind of just like, it is a delightful movie. It's not
Yeah.
like it's not like Disney classic level, it's not like
Hmm.
Pixar level, but it's really good.
Yeah.
It's way better than it has any right to be. So I just
Yeah.
had a good time with
Yeah.
that.
Story wise, really simple. Straightforward. Nothing crazy. Nothing amazing. But yeah, just the movie, like the love and care that was put into it. Like you
Hmm.
can tell the people who made it
Hmm.
are fans of the different Nintendo properties because it
And
shows.
it's a fun adventure, and it's
Yeah. Yeah.
actually, I know there were a lot of like questions about the casting and the like going
Mhm.
back to it. I'm like, oh no, this is actually really good. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
thought
Yeah. It's
so.
it's fine, and they joke about it in the beginning. Why he doesn't have the Italian accent, which is funny. So
I
yeah,
yeah
it's
that
yeah,
yeah yeah.
good
But
times,
yeah,
man.
the Super Mario Brothers movie. It's a good time.
Mm.
not the one with John Leguizamo
Right, that's the one I grew up on, so if my
and
kids can
Dennis
grow up on this one,
Hopper
man,
and
they are on their way. Yeah.
yeah. They don't know how good they have it.
Right,
But
right.
so I know that the movie is video game adjacent, but we are a video
Mhm.
game podcast, and we
That's
should
right, we
probably
are.
talk about what we've been playing lately. So, what have you been playing, Josh?
Well, I have been playing. I make my list every year of games that I want to tackle for the next year. I never end up finishing the entire list, but as I was looking through the different games, I decided to pluck one out that I had said that I wanted to tackle because the first game in this series is one of my favorite games of all time. So I decided I'd play the second, and it has a ridiculously long name. It's a 3DS game. It's called Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor excuse me, Devil Survivor 2 Record Breaker. So, main series Shin Megami Tensei, the Devil Survivor games are DS, Devil Survivor. They were on DS, but they got remakes. There was 1 and 2. They got remakes, and so they had an extra subtitle thrown on the end of them. So the first one is Overclocked, the second one is Record Breaker. Um, Now the Devil Survivor games are interesting within the series for a couple of reasons. Story wise, they do something. If you've ever played, oh my goodness, I can't. The World Ends with You. It's a
Okay.
similar premise to that, where there's some sort of cataclysm in Tokyo, and it throws Japan into a state of shock. And in the first game, it was lockdown in this area that you're in. No the cell phone service is gone, and it's Shin Megami Tensei, so demons are attacking and all this. And so these games tend to these two games, these Devil Survivor games. The reason they're called Devil Survivors because there's demons running around, and their survivor aspect is because they are grappling with this idea of losing all sense of normalcy and what humanity kind of or society devolves into in these extreme situations. Sort of like zombie movies, sometimes delve into this if they're really trying to tell a story, if they're not just, slasher movies or whatever. It really delves into this. Even The Walking Dead did a similar thing where, like, there are these factions of people that believe different things and everything that's going on. It's almost it feels a little post-apocalyptic, but it's like on the edge of apocalyptic, if that makes sense. So there's that in story wise, but also gameplay wise. It's a strategy RPG as opposed to your standard turn-based JRPG. But what makes it different from something like Fire Emblem, where you go on your grid and you attack someone, you do in this game too. You have a grid, but in your attack, then the enemy gets a chance to counterattack. And then if you've hit the enemy's weakness, you have a chance to get an extra attack as well. So it's a little different than kind of your more standard tactics style, Final Fantasy Tactics or um, along those lines of
Ogre
games. There was another
Battle
series, Ogre Battle, there you go, and Fire
or
Emblem and stuff like that.
Tactics Ogre. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what makes these games special. I'm probably 4 or 5 hours into this one. I will say it had a bit of a slow start, although that might do well. There might be a few things story wise. I kind of it plays similar in the beginning to the first one, but also just the pace of battles and things like that are slower than I was expecting. So it's a little bit of a slow start. The other thing that is a negative to me, it's just it's hard to overlook. It's not a big deal, but it's hard to overlook. Is some of the character designs are they do this Japanese thing where the females are out of proportion. Put it that way.
Hmm.
Especially some of the main characters. And so it's just like, really? Like this is the way that you're going to design some of these characters. And it's not all of them, but it's some of the main ones. And it's just it's just frustrating. It feels very childish, which is, So,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
unfortunately, it's like that. A lot of that design is just fan servicey, and
Right.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like, eh. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just you
I
kind of have to
wish
look
it wasn't
past
here.
it. Yeah. It's like, oh, this kind of sucks. Like, I guess,
Yeah.
like whatever. So,
And it
and
hasn't gotten to the point where it's like they actually use that for their characters, if that makes sense. Like
mhm,
there is nothing at least I have not hit anything in the game that is sexually explicit or anything like that. Not even close. It's more like these kids just took their college exams to get into college, so they're tail end of high school, and they're like, "Oh, that's a girl from school. Like, oh, she's popular. Are you going to talk to her?" Kind of a thing. Nothing even remotely farther than that. So there's no, yeah, there's nothing sexually explicit in the game at all so far that I've gotten into. But it's just like, man, why do you have to have those kinds of designs? So that's a
yeah,
little frustrating. Anyways, I am enjoying my time, but those are kind of the negative aspects of the game that
yeah,
I've been playing. But I'm excited to see where the game goes because, like I said, I do really like the first game. And I might not end up liking this one as much as the first game. I've heard some different things, but it's still a good time. So I'm enjoying that. Playing that on 3DS. And then earlier today, I did start playing on my laptop. I booted up Titanfall 2 because that's a game that's on our top 100 list,
mm,
and I've never played it. And it's a short little game, so why not? You know, get in a big mech and shoot some people up and have a good time, right? Because it's
yeah.
video games. So,
Because it's
um,
video games.
welcome to the new year, new beatdown score. I'm at a goose egg. Haven't beaten anything. So that's all I've got to report on. How about you?
Pretty much the same
Okay.
as last time we talked. Just kind of dragging away. Like at the time of recording, uh, just kind of playing Snap. Now, I did manage to grab a Remnant 2 session with the Lukes,
Mm,
and yeah, yeah, that game is the it's really great co-op, but it does feel like it's kind of tuned a little too hard for single player, at least for like
okay.
where
Mhm.
I'm at, for where Parker's at. Um, and maybe Deuce would disagree, but it's just like it's really kind of clever and good and fun, and I'm enjoying it a lot. Um, but at the same time, it does kind of like, it's like we did this one puzzle, and it's like basically there's like these like we called them murder cubes. And it's like a combat puzzle, and
Hmm.
like I had done that solo, and so I kind of knew what to do, but it was just like we died probably half a dozen times. Just it's like because
Okay.
it's you know murder cubes.
Mhm.
They should be avoided. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
Uh,
makes sense.
Yeah, if you can avoid murder cubes, I'd stay away from them. Just that would be my recommendation. So did
Yeah,
play
I hate
some
cubes.
Remnant 2. I fired up some Evil West, which is a game that Parker
Mhm.
and I had started a while ago. And that's like just straight sevens. Like it's just like comfort foodie.
'Kay.
It's not like awesome, but it's good. And
Mhm.
I'm kind of looking forward to like finishing that up, wrapping that up. Uh, I'm still carrying over my Link to the Past playthrough from last
Okay,
year,
yeah.
where
Mhm.
I want to kind of just I want to put a pin in that and do a replay. So it's like I'm kind of juggling some lighter stuff, and of course, like Marvel Snap's just kind of like going on in the background. I
Mhm.
did do a little bit of rejoicing, um,
Mhm.
because recently a card was nerfed, and it's a
Ah.
card I hate, and so. Um, I was very glad to see that card kind of like get hit with a Nerf stick. It made me
Mm.
very, very happy, and hopefully it will never come back again because I hate it. Um,
Oh,
I
okay.
want it to be a dead card. I want nobody to ever play that card again
Mm.
because it's the worst.
Have have they done okay, sorry, no, 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 you're saying dead card, that you just mean people don't have it in their
N-
decks, right?
Yeah, people just don't play it anymore.
Yeah, yeah, because 'cause
Because
they've never
well,
actually taken cards out of the game, have they?
when Kitty Pride first came out, they did.
Mhm. Oh,
Kitty
okay.
Pride came
Okay, they've
out.
totally taken it out. Okay.
Um, she there were some problems with how she worked,
Mhm.
and so they just removed her.
Okay.
and then
Okay.
they brought her back.
Gotcha.
But Airshim just actually introduces a whole new deck type, and I hate it. I thought it was garbage.
Mm.
Um, I hated it so much. So yeah, I'm glad that it's gone. And if you were an Airshim player, uh,
I feel
go
bad
suck.
for you, son.
Yeah, sucks to suck, bro. Like, but yeah. So just haven't really been playing anything, and like not anything seriously. It's
Mhm.
at the time of recording, I'm still like waiting. I'm just trying to get through peak, so
Yep.
don't have
Yep.
tons and tons of time on my hand, and that's not bad, but yeah. So I am also like at zero.
Mhm.
New year, new beatdown season, big fat goose egg over here as well.
Yeah.
So
Let's get it.
yeah, and if you guys, and again, if this is your first time joining us, the beatdown is a meta that we run year long, where basically the point is to play games that we want you to prioritize playing games that you already own, your
Mhm.
backlog. So when you buy games or you're gifted games, you take positive points, and when you beat games, you get negative points. The goal is to get that number as low as possible,
Mhm.
you know, even negative, chipping away at the backlog. Yeah. If you're looking for a full set of the rules, just, hit us up in the Discord, hit us up like in a DM or whatever, and
Mhm.
we'll send you a copy. Or just like I said, there will be a Discord channel uh, dedicated to that. But
Mhm.
yeah, so that's
Or if you wait till next week, we might have the beatdown rules as your bite size that comes in the
well,
feed. So
yeah.
you want to
Next
wait for
next
that.
week's bite size will be sort of a going through the rules, sort of, and just talking through all of that process. But
Mhm.
so yeah, but yeah, it's just a meta we run, and it's kind of like sort of it's a little bit of a tool, kind of like a meta game
Yeah.
kind of thing. I don't know. It's
It
fun.
helps keep me honest for sure.
It doesn't do much except for let me know that I'm not being very SMRT in that moment. But yeah, and we like it, and hopefully maybe for some of the for potential new audience, you might too. Um, and honestly, I think like we've got a pretty. I think in this coming year we're going to have a really pretty tight rule set, and that there's a little bit of flexibility, but for the most part, there's a little room to sort of like get you know wibbly wobbly to get a
Mhm.
little to fudge some things, but not in a bad way. Um, so,
I do
but that
like
being said,
fudge.
yeah, I love fudge. I had a friend tell me that he makes creamsicle like dreamsicle flavored fudge,
Mm.
like orange and vanilla cream, and I was like, that sounds delightful. I typically
Dangerous.
I
That's for
typically
sure.
think of fudge as chocolate, right?
Yeah.
But apparently
Yeah.
fudge is just like that type of candy, and you can
Right.
whatever
Right.
but anyways.
Yeah. But it is dangerous because it is highly caloric.
Oh, it's
Just put it
but
that
it's
way.
delicious. It's
Just like
delicious.
cheesecake. Anyways, um,
But just something that we're kind of throwing out there, and something else that we want to throw out there is that like so many other podcasts, we have a Patreon, and we typically sort of just tell people like, hey, think of our Patreon as a bit of a tip jar. And but we also want to sort of say like, hey, if you like what we're doing, and you've kind of already done the sharing and the caring, you've told people about it, you've rated and reviewed us on your podcast listener of choice, or even here on YouTube or whatever. You've done that, and you want to look for a way to go a little bit above and beyond. We do have a Patreon, and we'd like you to maybe think about it. It's a way to partner with us, and it also provides
mhm.
some benefits. Each and every patron gets early and uncut access to each and every episode. There's a patron exclusive podcast called the Bro Hang. Patrons also have the privilege, or well, maybe they don't look at it as a privilege. Maybe they look at it as a pain. I don't know. You'd have to ask one of them.
Obligation.
The obligation. No, but they don't have to. But each and every one of them can nominate a topic or a game for us to do an episode about, and then they can join us for that episode.
Mhm.
if they so choose. So, you know, they also patrons also have a little bit more of a direct line of access to Josh and I through the Discord. There's a patron exclusive channel or in our Discord server through the Patreon. And yeah, overall, we just like them better than people who don't give us money. Just saying, like, if you want us to like you more, give us money.
If you'd
Um,
like to buy our friendship.
yeah, essentially, no. But for people, if that sounds appealing to you, again, a link will be in the link tree to that.
Mhm.
That being said, last but certainly not least, we have friends that we've kind of not kind of, but we partner with in a lot of ways, and we have a little bit of a network, and it's us and it's our friend Paul Lytle, the Techno Funk Boy. His current project is the Thorns of War, an actual play podcast set in the Dragonlance universe. I got
Mhm.
it right all on
You
my
did.
own because
Well
I'm
done.
super SMRT. Um, Wesley Ray, the Hench Dad himself, his current project is the Retronym podcast. It's a
Mhm.
nostalgia video game. Like he does do some pop culture, some Pokemon stuff. You know, it's fun. His
Mhm.
content does tend to be a little short form, and that's well, except for his Pokemon ranking lists, and they're excessively long. And mostly, he's just going to tell you which ones he really hates and should be, and should go die in a fire.
Should get
Um,
roasted. Mhm.
should get roasted. Sometimes he talks about like Pokemon he wants to eat. He talks about lots of other things, but I'm just saying, like those are things that stuck with me. Um,
Mhm. And
and
that's why we partner with him.
and yeah, exactly. That's why we like him. He's like, hey, what Pokemon would you eat? And we're like, none
Mhm.
of them. They're sentient
Oh,
creatures.
Poliwhirl for sure.
And he's like, nah, I'm gonna eat a Torchic. And I'm like, dude, not my guy. Nah.
Put it in a
Um,
bucket.
give me some barbecue sauce. Um, but lastly, but certainly not leastly, is our friend Porcho, the Wonder from Down Under. He has a podcast called Nothing New Under the Porch, and it's kind of, I don't know, like what if Hard Drive met Jesus, or the
Hard
Babylon
times.
Bee. Hard time, not Hard Times, Hard Drive, which is
Oh, okay.
the video game
Oh, gotcha.
parody, news
Okay.
parody
Sorry.
site.
Mhm.
I think Hard Times and Hard Drive are like, I think,
Are
anyways,
they
but
related? Anyways.
I think they
Sorry.
might be associated.
Okay.
Um, but
That
Hard
makes sense.
Drive love Jesus. Like if the dudes behind Hard Drive love Jesus, or if Babylon B did more video game sort of focused content, that kind of would be what Portrait do. But Portrait does what
Mhm.
what Portrait do. Oh, they talk
It do
pretty.
be that way.
They talk pretty someday. Not today.
Mhm.
It do be that way though. Um, but I would kind of say it's like that, but with 100% more bad accents,
Mm.
and I'd say also 100% more like just genuine charm and insight.
Mhm.
So yeah. And he's also like he's really dry, and I love that about, like, his sense of
Yeah.
humor is really wry. Yeah. So we love those guys. We love what they're doing, and we think you should go check their stuff out. So
Here's a word
here's a
from one of
word
them.
there. Yeah, exactly. A word from one of them.
Do you think that this is like a really close up shot of two small crabs? Or were those really big crabs?
How do you know they're even real?
They're imaginary crabs. Jimbleton, please tell me we can go look for imaginary crabs. Can we?
How would you look for something that's imaginary?
Oh, that's the best thing to look for. War has come to Kryn, a war building for centuries as dragons and gods drift into myth and legend. This is the war that will bring an end to it all, or restore what was lost for good. Dragonlance, The Thorns of War, is an actual play Dungeons & Dragons podcast. Available everywhere in May. Subscribe today.
And we're back. All right,
again.
folks. So tonight, like, listen, this one is probably not going to be super heavy. All we're
Mhm.
going to be talking about is really sort of moving forward what 2025 is hopefully going to look like for us as a podcast. And
Mhm.
so I don't know that there's going to be really any like deep topical discussion or exploration of themes or anything that you might be accustomed to. And this might not be a 2.5 hour long episode. In fact,
Mm.
I'd almost put money on it that it won't be.
Mm.
I
How
could be
much
wrong
money?
though. I well, uh, $1. I'm not confident in our ability um, to keep things light and easy and breezy. We are really good at being bad at brevity,
That's
and
true.
it's kind of our
But that
shtick.
that actually brings us to the first thing. So this is a New Year's episode. We're talking New Year's resolutions. Not really, but sort of. We are talking about, like you said, what the podcast is going to look like in the new year. And the first one of those things is that we're going to start being good at brevity. And so we're doing that with it. No, that's actually not
This was
your
not in the
face when I
notes.
said that.
No,
You're going off script, man. I don't know.
you're not saying that. I never said that. I did
I
not
did
agree
not
to
agree.
this.
I will never be good at brevity, dang it.
Well, okay, and again, this is more for the benefit of people who might be checking us out for the first time.
Mhm,
Is we tend to just we like granted, you're not going to get like 4 5 hour long episodes out of us that often. I'm not saying it will never happen because we have been fairly beefy. Like
mhm.
we've got
Yep.
some chonkers out there, but but we do try to like we want to give the conversation time to breathe, and we want to
Mhm,
actually have a conversation. And Joe Rogan says it only gets good, it starts getting good at the 2 hour mark. um
mm,
i
mm.
I think that's
And
mostly
I felt
because
that.
he's a
No,
drug
I'm just kidding.
addled. Um, it's if he
It's
weren't
true.
so stoned all the time, he might actually be able to have conversations that get pick up a little quicker. But I think
Mm,
that's only like listen, it's Joe Rogan. He's got like the biggest podcast on the face of the planet. So
right.
yeah, okay. Um, like him, hate him, love him, whatever. I don't.
Mhm,
But I do think like that idea is sound, is that good conversation and the really meaningful stuff happens after a while. That's why we do the banter up front. That's why we sort of have like these like little warm up stuff with our media talk and with the backlog reports and all of that stuff. Like a lot of that is to sort of like keep priming the pump and like help us to sort of get ready for the main event. Um,
mhm.
so I don't like, I'll just be honest, that's something that I just don't see us ever. And again, it's not, we're not going to be like, it's always, at least an hour and a half. Like, listen, if we don't have much to say, we don't have much to say. And
Sure.
we've got to be honest and kind of move on. But
Mhm.
I do think on the other side of it is like, it's a bit of a hallmark for us that we
Yeah.
take the time that we need to have the conversation that we need.
Mhm. Yeah, also, in 175 episodes, that has never happened. So, uh, I don't think
No.
we've ever come to an episode and said, I really don't have much to say on this topic, and that's why we've chosen it.
Usually, well, and usually, like, I mean, like, sometimes we'll have like, there are the random hour and a half long sort of bits, but they tend to
Mhm,
be the exception, not the rule. Um,
mhm.
so if you're looking for
Yeah.
something quick and easy and breezy, may I recommend our friend Mark over at Quick Play? Um,
Mhm.
you know, he does short talks about video games that are very, very good. We,
Yes.
however, do long talks about video games that are also hopefully very, very good.
Mm.
At least
So
we
we hope.
endeavor for that. We endeavor to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, because we just yeah, like you said, we want to dig into it. We want to see what there is, and that actually leads us into part of the reason that we want to do this episode. So yes, it is a looking forward at 2025, but it is also kind of a culmination of some things that we've been discussing for the last few months. I'd say 3-4 months at least.
It
Um,
it, it feels like, and again, it feels like probably. in some ways, we've probably been talking around this for maybe a year.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
Like some of this stuff has sort of like got floated kind of floated out a long time ago, but it's
Hmm.
only within the last like 6 months or so, yeah, that we've really kind of like said, oh no, like, hey, maybe it is time to sort of like strike some of take a swing at some of this stuff. So,
Right. Right. Yeah. And we don't necessarily have to go into all of the reasons for that. I will just throw out there that a big part of that was just how much my life has changed and my family life's life has changed over the past year and a half, 2 years now. That caused some starts and stops to some ideas that we had that you had as well. Because I think you were starting to look this way, and in what could the podcast become, before I kind of jumped on board just because I was focusing on what
well,
life was gonna look like.
you
So there
had
was
a
that.
much more pressing sort of issue to address. You were
Yeah.
looking for another job, and meanwhile,
Right.
I'm over here
Right.
daydreaming, and you're going like, "Well, okay, dude, but you
Those are
know."
great ideas. Yeah. And but I just can't dedicate that much. And so now that life has kind of settled down into kind of this new phase, this new season of life, then it has been some more thinking deeply about why we do this podcast. Because so
Mhm,
back from the beginning, we've done it just for the fun of it. We think that we do have some interesting things to say. We think that video
mhm.
games, we can have discussions about video games that go a little bit deeper than kind of the surface level talk. Because, I mean, video game, we all know. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably know you've probably listened to other podcasts or followed other YouTube channels that talk about this as well. There's so much content out there. You can get people's opinions all day long, whether that's in written form, audio, video, whatever. But we also recognize that some of the way that the video game journalism industry works is that you have to go at such a rapid pace that you can't go very deep. Now, there are other outlets that do go deeper that we personally appreciate a lot. However, when we take a look at what we do as a podcast, there were a few things that we wanted to solidify and make explicit, and as we're moving forward just in our identity as the Backlog Breakdown. And so out of that has come a few different things, one of which is the most obvious probably to you now because we mentioned it a few times. We want to go on YouTube. We recognize there's lots of people who enjoy listening to podcasts and watching podcasts on YouTube. So hey, why not? We have had cameras while we're doing this for
Mhm.
quite a long time, largely because we want to see each other when we talk, because that
Yeah.
helps the conversation. Um,
Yes.
but so even from the beginning, I mean, I don't remember ever doing just audio. I could
Well,
be wrong there.
it started out, I think they were Skype calls.
Yeah,
Um, they were Skype
yeah.
calls, and then we would record the audio
Yeah,
separately.
we do that separately and we just sync them up in post. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, so there is that video. It's just another level of how we want to do that. We've been talking logistics for a while, but that's the first thing that we wanted to do is commit. And so a few months ago when we decided that we did want to commit to it, we had kind of tested the waters with a few things and we said, "Hey, we're going to launch it in 2025." And so here we are. New Year's Day launching our video version of these podcasts in 2025. Let's come back to that in just a moment. I want to go back to where, or pick up from where I left off earlier, is just solidifying what we want this podcast to be and what we believe it is. So for me, and Nate, you can correct me if you'd like, if you have like a different take on this. But for me, as I thought about what we do as a podcast and the conversations that we have, yes, we talk about video games primarily, but we've also been circling around this idea of stewardship, how to work and play well, and how those two interact and rest in the place of recreation. And obviously, we have always talked about the fact that we are Christians. Like, we have a Christian worldview. So when we evaluate video games, when we evaluate our time with video games, we do so from hopefully a scriptural lens, but with the idea that this is a good gift from God and we want to engage in it wisely. And so we want to engage with the themes in the games that we play wisely. We want to be honest about the time that we spend and use our time wisely, because as it says in Romans, we ought to be a living sacrifice. Our whole life is an offering up to the Lord. That doesn't mean you're always working, though. It does mean there are these rhythms of work and rest, because that's how God has created us and how He created the world. So all these things, these things have always been a part of the podcast.
Mhm.
But early on, in my mind, I thought, well, I don't want to limit us to just talking to other Christians about video games. I want everyone to be able to participate. And while I do think, I understand my thought process, um, as I've come to evaluate the podcast more, and as we've had some discussion, and as I look around, here's what clinched it for me, is that as I look around online, in the online space, even in the church, in the evangelical spaces that I'm a part of, and that sounds so 2025 spaces that I'm in, um, I think there is a huge hole of people that are talking about video games in particular, entertainment in large measure, but video games in particular, because it's such a huge part of the culture. Um, but I don't think that Christians, by and large, are talking about video games and engaging with the medium very deeply. And so we wanted to be more explicit about the fact that, yeah, we are Christians, and so our primary um our conversations are going to come from that worldview, and you're always going to get that. And we want the church to be able to, the church is the people of the church, the Big C church, to be able to engage in this medium wisely, and we want to equip people to do so. So that has become our main goal. Now, if you're not Christian, of course you can still listen, but just recognize that has become our goal. And so we've made some small changes over the past few months. You may have noticed, some of the intro that we do, even some of the way that our conversations go. I have tried to be more explicit about some of the scriptural themes in the games that I play, or the way that it relates to, the way that faith interacts with the things that we're dealing with in video games. Again, it's always been there, but that's going to be a bigger part of it is the purpose behind the podcast now. So I feel like I've been going for a while. You have something to say,
No,
Nate?
yeah, I think all of that was like I would sort of second and amen to all of that. What I would also just sort of stress is that I think, like, again, it's like you said, those things have always sort of been there, but they will be, I think, much more pronounced for both of
Mhm,
us sort of moving forward. I think, like, and you said intentional, sort of just being a lot more intentional about it. I think it just we're we're basically honing
mhm,
our 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 scope. I don't know.
mhm,
We're zeroing in, and part of it was just the fact that, um, frankly speaking, that we thought that there was a little bit of a lack in sort of Christian commentary on this, and especially because it is so important. And I think the other sort of side to this is we also recognize that in a way that we kind of want to say, like, hey, we're a bit of a resource. Like, you have two guys
mhm,
who were both churchmen. Like, you're a pastor,
mhm,
I'm a deacon, you're an elder, and I'm a deacon in our respective denominations,
mhm.
and we love the church. We love our brothers and sisters. We also really we love video games. Not the same way, right? But we
Yeah.
think video games are pretty cool. We and not just pretty cool, but like they can be powerful storytelling tools or like
Mhm,
modes, and it's like they are so incredibly such a, in some ways, it's taken for granted how big a part and like how big a role, like everybody plays video games now.
Hmm.
um and just the fact that there isn't more, it's like when we had Patrick
Right.
Miller from on, and he pointed out the fact that the video game industry is makes more money than music and film. Like this
Hmm.
is a massive industry with massive cultural impact, and
Hmm.
Christians, in a lot of ways, we can't shy away from that stuff. And I don't think the answer, and I don't think that you think that the answer is to just sort of retreat from it. It's rather to learn
Hmm.
how to be in the world and not of the world. And so as
Right.
a part of it, like what we're saying is like we're kind of looking at our brothers and sisters and saying, hey, use us here, like, as a resource in sort of maybe exploring, like, is like, when it comes to the games that we're going to be talking, that we have talked about, that we will be talking about, like, hey, like, listen to that coverage, like, use that to help maybe shape whether or not you should play this, or maybe whether or not you should allow your children to play this. um
Hmm.
Use us, and just sort of like, and maybe thinking about how you relate to this stuff, like use our passion and our expertise to help you maybe equip yourself and or your brothers and sisters in the church to say, like, hey, like, the way we can think about this in a better way. And we're
Hmm.
going to sit here, like, I'm going to sit here and tell you, like, are we probably the best qualified people for this? No, but we're here. Like, we're showing
Hmm.
up, like, and this is
Yeah.
kind of what we've been doing for years in sort of a much more casual sort of capacity. And I think at this point in time, we're just sort of saying, like, well, we've kind of been doing this, like, why don't we make it official, so to speak?
Yeah.
It's, and so I really think it's not it's almost a further evolution, where it's not just like, hey, we've kind of been doing this, so let's actually refine that and sort of zero in on that. It's also saying, like, let's actually, like, put legs on it too, and saying, like, hey, yeah, we've been having these conversations about this for years, and actually looking at the church, and in a way saying, like, here you go, like, here's a tool,
Hmm.
here's a handle, like, here is a place for you, our brothers and sisters who might need help navigating this, at least to like, maybe springboard conversations.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, one of the things that, like, in sort of adding, sort of further building out, like, we want to build this thing, like, we want to be a resource, we want to be useful, we
Hmm.
want to be helpful, we want to be a blessing to our brothers and sisters, we want to be a blessing to the church. And we
Hmm.
don't think that the answer is like, oh, video games are bad, they're counterproductive, because, like, some of that is true, some of that criticism is true, right? And we don't shy away from saying that, like, hey, there are problems and pitfalls and things that we need to be concerned about and conversations that need to be had. But
Hmm.
and for some people, hey, maybe video games are not viable. But
Right.
I think, like,
Yeah.
at the same time, we need to just sort of say, but they're not immoral. They're not
Hmm.
always a waste of time. Can they
Hmm.
be? Yeah, sure. But, like, I think the best things is, it's kind of this, is it hard to sort of navigate these the questions surrounding some of this? Sure. But most good things, most worthwhile things are hard. And I think that sort of cultivating a healthy relationship with not just video games, but media and entertainment in general
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
hard, but good.
Hmm.
Like, and it's like, we should be able to engage with good books, good movies, good music, good video games,
Hmm.
you know, using discretion and wisdom,
Right. Right.
but, like, and so that's kind of what we're doing. We're saying, like, hey, like, and in our conversations, hopefully that will help you, the listener, and help, others to think about these things and to ask these questions, and maybe actually do the hard thing, which is a good thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and insofar, like you were saying, insofar we don't think that video games are inherently bad or wrong or anything like that. Insofar as they are a form of entertainment, then we ought to treat and think about entertainment in very similar ways. But insofar as they are a unique form of entertainment. So, for instance, I think video games are acutely more addictive than something like reading books because of the
Mhm.
way that it engages you. Um, I also think they can be uniquely impactful because you have player agency in the story that's unfolding. So those are some of the themes, that we want to tackle and that we have, frankly, over the years of doing this podcast. But those are some of the things that we want to deal with seriously and talk about seriously. And yes, we cut up a lot. We have a good time and we joke around,
Mhm.
but we
Yeah.
want to
Well,
have some
we're
deeper
goofballs.
conversations. Right. Right. So, and we're never going to get away from that.
Mm-mm.
That's just part of it. So anyways, that's where we want to take the podcast. And again, these conversations have been occurring for a few months. And so you might have noticed some of these changes. We already have been kind of steering the ship that way. But once that was solidified as who we are as a podcast and kind of a renewed purpose behind it, whereas it didn't start with that purpose. It was to dive deeper into video games, to make sure we're enjoying the games that we own over just getting caught up in the hype cycle. That's where our name came from, the Backlog Breakdown. But as we move forward, yeah, we really want to help, even give a template, how you engage with stories and storytelling. And again, in this unique medium of video games that you actually interact with, and how that forms the player, because we even something is recent as the Outer Wilds that we played, we both recognized that there was something different about being explained the ending of that game or watching someone else play the ending of that game to actually being in control in the ending of that game.
Yeah.
There's another level there that touches a little deeper, that's hard to describe, to put into words, but I think that's something special about the medium. Now, as Christians, again, we have to be careful, because if what games like that are saying are wrong, they actually lead us away from the truth of God, of the way that He's created the world. We have to be very careful with that, and we have to, keep our heads and not get drunk on the interaction of video games. But again, those are the conversations that we seek to have on this podcast, not just for our own sakes. Yet, yes, there's an element where it is for our own sake. There's an element where we just want to praise the beauty of certain things. We as humans do that all the time. But also, as Nate has said, we want to be a resource for anyone else who is looking into the medium, who might not have even thought about these things before, who just, hey, likes playing a game at the end of the day just to unwind. Well, we would encourage you to think a little bit deeper about it. Think about the time that you have and how you're spending your time. Is this the wisest use of time? And when you can wholeheartedly say that, yes, this is a good form of just recreation, and then use it as an offering, and use the stories that are being told to tell us the deeper truths, or to point us towards, excuse me, maybe that's a better way of putting
I
it,
I
to
think
point us
some
towards the ultimate truth. Yeah.
just something to just sort of as a general observation is like we actually advocate that entertainment is good and in some ways necessary. And I
Hmm.
think that in some ways like we are sort of running counter to a lot of the narrative where so much of and again this is it's pretty anecdotal, like it's pretty like based in my experience, but so much of what I see in online, sort like in Christian, adjacent and evangelical circles, is about like it's about maximizing productivity. And
Hmm.
I think part of what we want to do is we actually want to help people reclaim the idea that rest and recreation and play is just as important. Now, granted, there is a you have we should have a different relationship. It's like, and again, talking about like 6 days of work, 1 day of rest, kind of thing. But like
Hmm.
that
Yep.
that rest is actually an important part, and play as part of being like play being sort of restorative
Hmm.
is important.
Yeah.
Like we kind of want to, in a way, we are pushing back against some of the narrative where it's like you need to be hyper productive, and we're saying like,
Hmm.
well, like let's pump the brakes, and like so in some ways, like we even sort of like push at that. Like part of what we do is we want to help the church in a small way reclaim a healthy love of play, a healthy
Mm.
love of like and so we're pushing against sort of some of the more Western Americanized secular tendencies to sort of think that it's all about like what like production and being
Hmm.
productive and you know and because I think yeah, I think there's a lot there, and that's sort of been a personal hobby horse of mine for years, anyways. So,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
but but yeah, I just
N-
I wanted to sort of like tack that on to what you're saying. Just saying like, hey, we do stress that like often.
Yeah.
Like we kind of hammer on that a lot. It's like no, like it's not just like a play is like oh you can do this. In some ways, we're saying like no, you probably should do this. Like
Mm-hmm.
this could be good for you. This could be restorative to you, and not again, not specifically video games but
Hmm.
just in general, like the general premise of like resting and recreating
Yeah.
and saying like
Yeah.
play is good and play is necessary and not just for kids, but like,
Hmm.
it's as a vital part of fellowship and
Mm.
community and
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. And so a lot of these things have just been solidified, I'd say, over the past year or and whatnot. So with all that in mind, that's kind of the bulk of what we wanted to talk about. But kind of the next steps or the things that we foresee here coming down the pike. Obviously, we already mentioned it. Hey, we're here on YouTube. Hi. Um, because we recognize there are people who want to who enjoy their podcasts on YouTube. It's where people are. I also recognize it's a bit more shareable than podcasts because if you've never gotten into podcasts, oh, what's a feed? How do you even do this outside of like a
Yeah.
one-off kind of a thing? So there's a number of reasons. And so hey, we're here on YouTube now. We are looking at some other ways to engage on YouTube. The podcast first and foremost is what we're committing to, having that uploaded on our YouTube channel here every other week, every main episode, and then bite-sized episodes every other week as well. And then we'd like to, time permitting, but we've been testing the waters with some things of doing different clips and things like that.
Hmm.
Obviously, as time goes on, production quality will probably get better. This is that we're still learning, and we're going to continue to learn. But this is how we're starting out with YouTube. I would say for just a second, because it is more shareable, because we are just kind of getting started here on YouTube. Nate always mentions, yeah, we have the Patreon if you've done the sharing and the caring. And this is what I wanted to mention real quick is just that, hey, we'd appreciate it if you tell your friends about us,
Yeah.
because we want to be a resource to the church. When we decided that, I think these things started flowing. Okay, how do we get the word out? Like, how do we even tell people who we are outside of the podcast that we're already doing? And so YouTube is one of those avenues. So we'd encourage you, if you like what we're doing, um, tell your friends or share it, on social media or something like. Just recommend, and maybe that'll come easier if we do start doing clips and things like that, as opposed to these full, multi-hour long episodes. Totally understand that. With that, I would also encourage your feedback as well. Obviously, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of negative feedback just because of the nature of the internet, but that said, that can roll off our backs, no big deal. But if there is something that you want to see from us,
Well,
like I said,
I won't let them
clips or
know that
things
I'm
like that,
crying myself to sleep at nights.
right? Um, no, I think the fact that we know who we are, as a podcast helps a lot
Mm.
in that. But if there are things that you would recommend or other ways that we can engage, other things that you see us doing that you would have some suggestions, I'd say we're all ears to those
Yeah.
things, to suggestions and things like that. So we've got tons of ways you can reach out. Obviously, our Linktree, linktree.com/the backlog breakdown. You can find us on social media there. You can comment on this video as well. So tons of ways you can do that, but we'd love to hear from you and other people who might have more ideas. So that is the YouTube. That's what we're committing to for this year. We also do have some bigger plans. One that I will just mention and in generalities, because we're still kind of grappling with the how and the logistics and things like that,
Mhm.
is one of the things that we talked about when we decided who we wanted to be is what our and our purpose and things like that, and how we want to be able to equip other people. One of the ideas that I had come up with was focusing around this top 100 games list that we have. And obviously, what does that mean that you're a top 100? But we've done episodes on a number of the different games that we have there. And so I think it would be beneficial to have some sort of a resource with even write-ups or links to episodes and things like that, so that our top 100 games could be a living document for someone who maybe is new to the medium and wants to hear about these games. Or maybe, Nate, like you mentioned earlier, maybe it's a parent who knows that their kid likes games and they don't understand what the big deal is, and so they can take a look at this list and take a look at these write-ups on these different games and why we enjoy them, or some of the pitfalls of some of them, or things along those lines.
Yeah.
So that said, and again, you may have noticed, but I think there is going to be a little bit more of a focus on these top 100 games that we have. And of course, it is, as much as we joke about it, it is a living document. And so things are going to be moved around, even though it's official for all of 2025. We have our top 100 official best games, or top 100 games, that, things will be moved around and things will be changed eventually over time.
Yeah. Well, and
So there's going to be a
you
focus on that.
you talked about how we want it to be a living document, and it kind of is, because it's
Mhm.
this thing that we do a mid-year refresh where we kind of
Mhm.
take it out and we look and see if anything that we played needs to make it on there, and then we do the end of the year sort of like big wrap up, and but we are definitely going to look at that and emphasize that a lot more. And again, hopefully what we'd like to do is build out some sort of website or platform or something where
Mhm.
you can, yeah, if there's a game on that list and we have an episode where you can listen to the conversation about that, where there might be a write-up accompanying that. So it's like
Mhm.
that again, that's part of the us wanting to be a resource, just again,
Yeah.
reiterating, restating what you said, but like that is important to us, that um that content be a little bit more readily available.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, because we recognize at this point we're 175 episodes in, and so there's a lot of things that we've said.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could, have kind of a more manageable way of looking at that from the standpoint of someone who's new to video games, or who hasn't thought about video games in the way that we've been talking about them.
Just
Something like that is something we aspire to create as a resource.
I think one of the things is, and just as a general sort of thrust of our content, we are really going to try to be a lot more intentional about, because there are holes. There are games on the top 100 list that neither one of us have, or that one of us might not have played or beaten. There are
Mhm.
because and this comes back to the original sort of birth of this list. It was actually populated by we actually asked friends and family to send us um their top tens, and then we
Mhm.
kind of had a tabulation thing. And over the years, what's happened is Josh and I have sort of that was the initial sort of run of things, and then over
Mhm.
the years, Josh and I have filtered through that, and we've sort of chipped away at some things, and we've just pulled other stuff. And so in a lot of ways, the top 100 list is not really, it's not an objective metric. Rather, it's really subjective. It's like the top 100 list is like the 100 games that Josh and I recommend. We're like, these are must play titles. And some of that is pretty heavily caveated. Some of that isn't. Um, and yeah, so, but there's a fair bit of stuff where it's not unanimous. Like, and some of that is just like we both played it and we land in very different spots. Like, recently we had a little bit of conversation about Death Stranding. I love that game. Josh does not. Um, but there are other games where, frankly, like one of us probably hasn't played it or beaten it or played enough of it. And so we're gonna try to basically fill the holes in that. And a lot more of our content moving forward this year, especially, is we're really going to try to focus on filling out that content. And obviously, we're going to still focus on trying to do more, or focus on keeping up with the patron episodes and the patron requests. Like, we want to make more of a priority. That's always kind of been a priority, but we want to be a little bit more intentional with that. And there might actually be a bit of a scaling back of some of the topical stuff, just because we do want to be a little more. It's not that we're gonna abandon topical episodes, because
Right.
frankly, like, that sometimes is really the meat and potatoes, and sometimes we'll just dust off like old stuff and sort of explore it, and maybe look at our thoughts and see if maybe these are the ways that I've changed or shifted or growed in this area, and like I think differently now than I did 2-3 years ago. Because that's how humanity works. That's how being a person works, is that you grow and you learn and you change. Dare I say it, on a Christian podcast, you evolve, not physically, but spiritually,
But like a
mentally.
Pokemon.
Like, no,
I'm
no,
kidding.
no. You're the worst, is what you are.
Yeah, that's one
No,
of those like video game Jesus juke things. Like,
it was
that I
terrible.
feel like a lot of Christian video game content that I see online is something along those lines.
Yeah. Well, and
Evolution. It's sort of
that's
like how we grow in Jesus.
yeah. Also, like, some of why we're doing what we're doing is some of what we saw out there was really kind of uh in it wanted for a lot. And so we want to offer something maybe a little more substantial and meaty and robust. And
Yeah,
we think that,
that's our aim. That's our goal.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think we accomplish at least a little bit of that,
Yeah,
hopefully. But
sometimes. I mean,
mhm,
sometimes we just come off sounding like absolute idiots. I'm sure.
yeah,
I'm sure. I
that
mean,
happens.
I'm on this podcast, so I'm sure that there's, a fair amount of idiocy. And with your love of puns and dad jokes, I'm sure that
Mm, mhm.
whatever I'm missing just by being an ignoramus, you more than make up for.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you.
Is it?
But that is that is really what we've come to share for this episode. It's New Year, and that is, the goals that we have for the podcast are going to revolve around that. There's some more granular things, that we're looking into in order to accomplish that. But by and large, that is kind of where we're headed as a podcast. Those are the New Year's resolutions for the podcast as we move forward. Um, and I say that to say that we are full steam ahead. We enjoy what we're doing, and we're going to continue it as long as God sees fit to allow us the time to do it. And
Yeah, and just the sort of an additional, like, another sort of addendum or caveat here
Mhm,
is that we are trying to roll this out in a way. Both of us work, like, I'm a letter carrier in the United
mhm,
States Postal Service. You're a pastor. Um, we have full-time jobs,
mhm,
and we have families, and so we're trying to
mhm.
sort of move forward with this in a way that doesn't take from either one of those primary areas of responsibility. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of we're doing this in our spare time, and so yeah,
Mhm,
it's one of those things, like, it'd be absolutely insane if someday this could be more than just sort of like an amateur thing. It's not
mhm.
outside of it's not outside the realm of possibility, but I think it's more of like we kind of exist as, for lack of a better term, lay people in this space. Um,
Yeah.
and so we're just we're trying to be reasonable and fairly measured in sort of rolling things out. But
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so it's we've got some stuff, and again, like we're sort of exploring avenues for a potential web page, sort of
Hmm.
thing. We're not sure exactly how we want to roll that out, but we do know that, like, we have an idea where at this point in time it is like, Josh, I think you used the term, it's sort of more of a logistical thing and trying to figure out how and where that we're going to really kind of pull the trigger on some of this stuff. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know that I have much more to add other than just like, yeah, it's the formats. Not there's for longtime listeners, there's not really going to be much of a change in some ways.
Hmm.
Not to the format, not really to and again, there's a little bit of like, we're going to try to be a lot more game oriented in sort of like
Hmm.
covering games. But yeah, um, and hopefully, sort of with the added pressure of yeah, and I say this with the added pressure of this being on YouTube, um, instead of just an audio feed, maybe that will sort of light a fire under my butt sometimes, and okay, I'll come in like a little hotter, a little more prepared. Um, I don't know. Um, yeah,
Can't make any promises.
yeah, I'm not making any promises. I do. Um, I think some of the fun is just like kind of like just having the conversation and see where it goes. And sometimes it gets messy and a little chaotic and silly. But I'm there for that though too. So,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just like I personally, I'm kind of excited to see where this thing goes. And I think at the end of the day, just the the important part is like, we do want this to be useful more than anything else. We want this to we want this to be helpful and
Hmm.
encouraging, and you know just we want it to be useful. We want it to bless the church. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, those are our thoughts for the new year and where we're headed, where we're going for this new year. Before we take off, before we end this episode, we do have just a few more forms to hit before we're done. We always like to give a shout out to someone in our community. And I've done this before, so I know this is a little bit of a retread, but I feel like it's just apt with not this format change, but being on YouTube, possibly. Maybe you found this through someone else. Maybe you're newer listener. But I wanted to shout out not someone personally, but in our Discord, we have a channel that we call Onwards and Upwards, where we share with one another some of the struggles of life, things that we're going through when you're having a rough patch, or when you're having a bad day, or when something more serious is going on in life. And it kind of runs the gamut of all kinds of stuff. And it's really cool to be a part of that, to see people sharing kind of deep wounds and hurts, and being able to pray for one another,
Mhm.
and to know that people are praying for you if you're sharing stuff in there. I just think it's really cool. So thank you. My shout out is kind of to everyone who uses that and posts in there. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for allowing me to pray for you. But also just as a way of saying that, hey, if you're going through something, join the Discord and drop something in there, because we'd love to be lifting you up in prayer.
Yeah, I wasn't laughing at you. It's Spike
Mhm.
actually just posted something in Discord not too long ago that it's very Spike-esque. Um
Ah, yes.
but
Hmm.
yeah. I want to shout out, and I meant to do this last episode, but I
Hmm.
forgot because I have the attention span of a goldfish, and
Mm.
I'm a 43-year-old dad of a 2-year-old, so I am very tired all
Hmm.
the time.
Yep.
That's my superpower. Like, the Incredible Hulk, he's like, yeah, that's my secret. I'm angry all the time. It's like, this is my secret. I'm tired all the time. Um, but uh, I want to shout out like I am going to shout out an individual. Akasha in the Discord server a while back had recommended a book. I think it's called The Horrors of Scripture. Um, and again, it's sort of, and I might have shouted out like in a bro hang or whatever, but it's a bit of an academic text. It's kind of a
Hmm.
devotional sort of thing. It's a little pricey, but it is very good. I have found it to be really a really yeah, and I'm not super far into it, but it's been a really eye-opening read,
Okay.
challenging. It's like I don't want to use like all the different, but it's kind of one of those like it's punching me in all the right places and
Mm.
kind of like yeah, but yeah. So far I have enjoyed it. So well done, sir. Thank you for that reco.
Hmm.
I
Awesome.
appreciate it.
Awesome.
But I think before we really kind of land this plane though, we do need to like, we had talked about last episode, our Christmas episode, we recorded some questions. Um
Hmm.
but I think now like what we like to kick off every month for with or not for but what we like to kick off every month with is a little bit of a challenge or
Hmm.
you know so Josh, let's
Yes.
what challenges are you sort of what challenges are you laying out for yourself in the coming weeks, days, months, years? Does the
Hmm.
Yeah, various assortments of time, increments of
Yep.
time.
So in update from last month's challenge was to start memorizing scripture and having that become uh, uh, getting into a rhythm of regular scripture memorization. Um, I have failed at that. I have not installed that habit. And so I'd like to continue, as much as this is kind of a, oh, it feels like, yeah, just continuing that as my challenge. Um, yeah, I recognize that's kind of lame, but also because I failed, I recognize I do need to get better in this area. And so really what it comes down to is, like I said, installing a habit. And so putting some reminders down. So I don't know, maybe on the next episode I'll give an update as to whether or not I've done that, so
Mhm.
that I have these reminders in place and I have these lists of scriptures to memorize and things like that. And I actually do have a list of scriptures in mind that I would like to memorize. I just didn't move farther than that to the actual memorization. And so it's so important that I do want to challenge that. I want to keep that as my challenge over the next month, and then double shame if I fail again, which I won't. But if I do, then shame on my
Well, even if
ancestors
you
as well.
memorize like one verse from your list,
Yeah,
that's like a
uh,
little bit of so
it's
it's like
better at least.
just memorize one Josh.
Mhm.
Um
Do it.
but yeah, scripture memorization is that's a good one to sort of like to hit. Um I'm kind of gonna do like I'm adding a little bit of a wrinkle to this year's challenges. And so there's gonna
Okay.
be the big challenge, right? And then I'm gonna have like and there's gonna be little challenge. And little challenge is gonna be like a little more flexible. That's gonna be like the monthly stuff. And that might double up. But big challenge is going to remain until it has been accomplished, or I just sit under big shame. Um,
Mhm.
and so last year you ended the beatdown season with like a negative 10 or 11. It
Mhm.
was a substantial gap. And I thought about it, and this is something that year upon year, year after year after year, pretty much ever since we've sort of had the beatdown, or its prior incarnation as Backlog Golf. Um, I have I think that first year of Backlog Golf, I did really well. And then as the beat down sort of became a thing, I have struggled to make serious headway because like I am a man of little self-control at times. Um, and sometimes the deals or the shiny gets me. And so
Mm,
what I would like to do is at some point in time in this season, I would like to hit -10.
mm.
It's like I wouldn't even say like I need to end the season at -10. I just
Okay.
need to hit -10.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean like if I go further or I end the season sort of like in that ballpark, that's a win. But I want to hit -10. Um, so that's my big challenge is like, and it's
Yeah.
like this is sort of like more fun, kind of like whatever. Um, but yeah, so hit -10. My little challenge, and it's sort of again going back to last month's was just sort of praying through the Psalms, and
Hmm.
it's not a total failure. I have done it a few times, but it's been pretty scattershot. And I want to, yeah, I want to install it as a habit. I think that was a really good sort of, choice of words that you use there when talking about memorizing scripture is that it's not as sticky as I want. It's not as reflexive as I want. And it's
Hmm.
not as consistent as I want. So I want to do a better job of that. I do feel like that's a discipline that would be good for me. And so I'm going to just I'm gonna sort of say like, yeah, I'm gonna stick with this again for this month, and hopefully, like when next month rolls around, I'll have been able to say like, oh no, like yeah, I actually kind of like came in here and I've been super consistent here, or at least
Mm.
mostly consistent. Um, so that's my little challenge is like, hey, like continue to pray the Psalms or pray through the Psalms, you know. So
Nice. That's awesome. So just like we've been doing for for quite a while now with these challenges, we've always had, one challenge, but then today you've brought in another one.
Here comes a new challenger.
yes,
I like
the
it. I like it.
the
I forgot
big
to play that
challenge,
earlier.
the
So
big yeah. I was
yeah,
waiting, and you just I was like, what's he doing?
I
He's
totally forgot
let me
about it.
hanging, and then I was just like, well, we'll just roll past it, and I will shame him later. But
Yeah.
now that you have corrected your mistake, your error,
Mhm. Oversight.
your oversight, that's the word I was actually looking for.
Mm.
Yes, yeah.
Nice.
So good
Nice.
job.
That's a kinder word. I like it.
Yes. It
My
is a kinder
failure.
word. That's probably why I couldn't think of it because I'm not always a kind person. Um, I'm
Oh,
a bit of a salty fart, um, a
you.
crusty
Oh
salty
no.
meanie. I don't
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm it well, it's getting late and I am starting to fade a little bit. So
Awesome.
this is probably a pretty good place to land the
Yeah.
plane. So Josh, if people want to get a hold of us, obviously they
Yeah.
can comment on this video, they can find us on the socials, but a way to
Mhm.
find like all the different places that we're at. We have a link tree. What,
That's right.
yeah.
Yep. Linktree.com/the backlog breakdown that has links to a number of different things, all our social media and stuff like that. Or if you are watching us on YouTube, social media stuff should be in the description of this video as well. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Like I said earlier, suggestions that you have for us, but also kind of your thoughts. Or here's another thing actually, and you can leave a comment on this. Do you see anyone else around the internet, around the space of video games, or it overlaps into pop culture, nerd culture, things like that. But anyone who comes from a Christian worldview that has a robust way of talking about these things. Like we said, we've looked around and we haven't found very much, but we'd love to connect with other people who may already be doing this. Whether that's again showing them our stuff that we've been doing, but also just meeting new people and becoming a part of another community and just kind of making connections. We'd love to do that. So if you want to share that with us too, we'd love to hear that in any way you want to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. That being said, Josh, we have done the thing.
Hmm.
Until next time, what should they do?
Guys, keep beating down your backlogs and we'll keep breaking down the benefits.